story is huge. If you open up your presentation with a story, now you're engaging with your audience, you're bringing them into the world that you want them to be in. As you bring them along, you're bringing them to the point. Phil Phails for you. The way I think about it for most of what we do with presentations and public speaking is we're trying to affect change or influence people in a good way, right? Where, let's say I'm brought in, let's say this luncheon that I'm going to do, to help people get better at something.
Right.
Or maybe influence them to a greater cause.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So you want to build this connection. Everything in life is about relationships. How are your relationships? How are you building them? How do you build it even in a presentation? So if I start telling you, like, we'll probably talk about where I've come from, what I've done in the past, how I got to where I am.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when I was 12 and I thought about this and this is what I did. And you're like, oh, wow, okay. You see me as a 12-year-old and we talk about my evolution or whatever. I'm giving you the story. And I've brought you into my life and this story and how I got to this point of how I see communication and public speaking. And then you're like, oh, all right, I see that. And then I start giving you more of, here's what I think about public speaking. It's this,
yeah.
You can speak like a champion. And let me tell you how. Because as you communicate better, it improves lots of areas in your life. Did you know that they say that the better communicator you are, the higher salary you'll get, the better your relationships are, the better your stature is? Studies have been done about that, right? So if I tell you these things, then maybe you're thinking, I probably could get a little bit better at my communications.
That's for sure.
Well, here's a few ways to do it. So now I'm giving you these things to make you a better communicator, right? And I'm trying to give you and help and uplift you. I don't get anything out of that, but I get you to become a better communicator so that wherever you are communicating, whether it's public speaking or one-on-one, you're getting that benefit.
Yeah, a couple things I think about is telling that story, you give a lot of relatability. I've been 12.
Exactly.
I've been these things. You're starting in a place where it's kind of like with improv. In improv,
yes,
you set up, you have what's called, there's the 4 things that you set up. You set up an environment, like where are we? What's the context?
Yeah.
You set up a relationship. Who are we to each other? What do we mean? You set up an emotion. What emotion is present? What's going on? And it's all these, what's the last one? I forget it. I'll think of it in a minute. But all of that are tethers.
Yes.
Or strings of relatability so the audience can say, like, I know what's going on.
Right.
I can visualize. The second thing I think about is you want whatever you do, whatever you talk about, to be memorable.
Right.
You want folks to take something away from there. And the best way to create a memory, a lasting memory, is to tie it to emotion.
Yes.
And goodness, when we reminisce, when we think about the past, when we think about a trial or a tribulation of somebody, it's oftentimes tied to an emotion that we feel.
Right.
And then we give it this, like, so we're tying the audience to us, then we're tying the information to an emotion that they might feel while you're providing this information.
And you do that through a story.
Through the story.
Let me tell you about this one woman that I coached. So I was working with her, and she's well established. She's got a book. She does coaching and training and all this stuff, and she wanted to get better at her public speaking.
Yeah.
And so we worked on her story. And initially her story was, I believe in hope, and I have this thing about hope and how people can get hope out of tragedy and things like that. And hope stands for, it's an acronym for things. And so I said, well, tell me your story. She said, well, it all started, I was junior in high school and was getting ready for the prom, and I've got 2 younger brothers. And I remember I was getting dressed, and my younger brother came running in and said that, my middle brother, he had drowned in the creek. And so, so that was like on Mother's Day, and it was prom weekend, and, and all these kinds of things. And so a lot of like everybody came together, and okay, so that's kind of how she told the story. Now your eyes are still like this,
that whole drowning part was a little bit more. It was the same tone as everything else,
but
it was almost like a bullet point. I'm like, wait a second, dude.
Yes, and so for I don't know, maybe a couple of hours we worked, and I heard this story from her now as we're working, probably 10, 12, 15 times.
Yeah.
And I would try to coach her through. And by the end, the way she told her story made all the difference. Because now, by the time we finished our coaching session, her story started more like, I remember when I was a junior and I was getting ready for prom. It was Mother's Day. I was getting dressed. And it was and I was nearly in tears. And I had heard that story a dozen times.
When she told it.
But that last time, wow.
It's probably hard for her to do that, though. She probably told it that way, matter-of-factly, so that she could steel herself and not express emotionally in a world where sometimes being vulnerable is scary.
Yes.
Maybe you feel it's a burden on the other. I don't want to burden you with the emotions I have tied to this story.
But
so
that
you're
story,
unlocking something.
Yes. And that story is what created who she is, and her program and her business and everything was centered around that story. Yeah. And it wasn't being effective the way she was telling it. And by the end, wow, it was just, and it's how you tell a story and how you, like you said earlier, the emotion and how you tie people to that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you've got that audience that are going, wow.
Yeah.
And they want more.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think it's that vulnerability. Well, that's the willingness to bring people into your emotional space to feel that emotion while you're talking about it.
And that all goes back to communication.
What's communication?
How are you communicating? Are you being vulnerable? Are you telling the story in a communicative way? Her first way versus her last way.
Yeah,
Those are two different ways to communicate.
Same information.
We didn't change anything.
Yeah.
We didn't change anything.
Data's the same.
And I didn't make it like overly dramatic. I didn't make it like, I want you to have a tear running down your eye.
Yeah.
No.
It needs to be authentic.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It can't be
the word right
people
there.
People smell fabrication
I like
that word.
A
hound dog, right?
Yep.
So it has to be authentic.
You have to be authentic.
That vulnerability comes from placing yourself in that moment time and time again when you tell the story, because it's powerful.
Yes.
The story's powerful. We're talking about reframing and framing. Because we could all tell a story 100 ways. The story of our life, we could tell it as a victim. We could tell it as a champion. We could tell it as a smart person, a dumb person, because we've been all of those things.
Right. And you may change your story depending on your audience. You may shift it a little bit depending on who you're talking to and why.
So you're an expert at framing in some way. It's all authentic.
Right.
It's all vulnerable. It's almost like you got an audience, you're like, well, this audience wants to see the pen from this perspective. Right. This audience wants to see, this audience likes the tip of pens. So I'm going to take them down here and show them just this part.
Right. If you're going to sell that pen, depends on who your audience is, right? If you're in sales and they tell you, there's the stories of, okay, you're looking for a sales job. Here, sell me this pen.
Oh, well, I've seen that in the movie.
Seen that?
How you do it is you go like, write your name down.
There's all different ways.
Here's some paper, write your name down. He's like, I don't have a pen.
Right. And it could be if you're talking to highly technical people.
That was in
maybe
the Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe you talk about how it's constructed, what it's made out of, how long it will last,
Yeah.
right? The click, the
What is
feel.
important to people?
Right.
What's important to you?
Maybe
Yeah.
if you're talking to a writer,
Do you
it's
want an
the
authentic,
smoothness.
or maybe like, oh, do you care about craft materials? Do you like, oh, artisan? This is
Yeah.
a handmade pen.
Still the same pen.
Yeah, it's going to have
How
the
are you
same
telling your
function.
story?
What's the story? When I was living in England, I was at Oxford. I didn't get my degree there. My wife at the time did, and I would hang out at the bar at night. I was the social one. My partner at the time, she was doing all the heavy lifting as far as academia is concerned. But I was hanging out with the same people, these PhDs at the bar late at night. So we would riff. And one of them was getting their PhD in art. And her whole thing was about how the story around the art increased its value.
Right.
Whether that was the material used, more detail in how the crafting of the art came together. But in the audience, in the buyer or whatever, whoever's looking at it, the more fidelity they have with regard to the craft,
Right.
the higher the value they perceive that art.
Yeah.
And public speaking is an art form.
It is an art form. It's also a skill that can be learned. They're crafting the story to have an emotional impact.
Right.
To get you to come into where I want you to be, because we want to help people. We want to lift them up. We want to provide something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you do.
We're
you
influencing.
We're influencing
in a positive way.
There are these mirror neurons in our brains, right? And that's in my speaking guide.
Yeah.
It talks about mirror neurons.
Yeah.
And so we do that. We will mirror. Matter of fact, I just read something that says the emotion that I feel retelling a story about something that I felt, if I'm telling it and you weren't even there, you're going to feel that same thing, because our neurons are going to mirror and you're going to feel that exact same thing. We're pretty close to it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like the body and the mind are amazing at what they do and how we do it. For yours, it's what could you provide? What's the overarching, what's the one big thing? And then how would you do that? How would you teach somebody some of these things in a 30-minute to 60-minute, depending, the circumstance and who it is and the audience and all those things we've already talked about. And then who would benefit from that? And then how do you go about saying, okay, I want to talk about mindfulness, right, as part of this bigger picture, and how it's impacted me, what I've learned along the way in the past 8, 10, 12 years, what I've learned from some of the people that I've interviewed. I've interviewed so many people on my podcast. And let me tell you about a couple of the people that I spoke with that really impacted how I thought about mindfulness.
Yeah.
I talked to this one woman who...
You get into the story.
And then you get into the story. And how I met her was, and I asked her if she'd be willing to come on my podcast. And that podcast was one of the best ones I've ever done. And it did not go in the direction I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
Right. And so you tell the story about what this is. But at the end, what is it that they can take away from this story? And it had to do with mindfulness, where we were talking and I just went, wow. That's the nugget right there.
Yeah, the nugget is...
And now you talking to your
try
audience.
mindfulness.